I'm 21 years old. This happened to me shortly after I turned 18 and graduated high school. My family moved to a new house in Texas. My mother claimed that it was so we could get a fresh start, but I knew the truth. She was ashamed of all the trouble that my sister Jocelyn had gotten into in our hometown. Weeks later, after we settled into the new house, Jocelyn disappeared. My mother received a phone call from my sister's parole officer. Apparently they found her in Atlanta. And to make a long story short, Jocelyn wasn't thrilled about the move, so she ran away to a friend's house. Unfortunately, I couldn't fly back to Georgia with my mom, and I had no choice but to stay in Texas. The next morning after my mom left, I went for a jog around the new neighborhood to familiarize myself. It was when I stopped to catch my breath and change playlists on my phone that I felt a cold feeling creep up my spine. It was the unmistakable sensation that you get when you're being watched. I looked around, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. But I knew that someone was watching me from somewhere close by. I decided to cut my walk short. As soon as I reached my house, I locked the doors and immediately ran upstairs to take a quick shower. While I was washing up, I heard a faint thud from downstairs. I quickly turned off the shower and listened. Another thud followed. I quickly threw on my clothes and ran downstairs to check things out, but there was nothing. The front and patio doors were locked, so I was left feeling a little confused. Trying my best to keep my composure, I was finally able to breathe when my mom called to check up on me. I didn't want my mom to be worried about me. She was already stressing out enough because of the situation with my sister, so I told her that I was fine and that I was going to order takeout and chill for the rest of the day. Later that night, around 10 p.m., I finished up my dinner while binge-watching How to Get Away with Murder on Netflix, and eventually fell asleep on the couch. I suddenly woke up a couple of hours later. It was around 1 a.m., and the room was freezing. The thermostat showed 42 degrees. That's when that dreadful feeling came back. I felt like a deer being eyeballed by an apex predator. Danger was close by. My stomach felt like I was doing somersaults. Something was very wrong, and that's when I noticed that my phone was missing. After a brief search on the couch, I couldn't find it. Annoyed, I decided to use a website called Text Now on my laptop. It's a free online service that I sometimes use to track my misplaced phone. Trembling, I typed in my number. Almost immediately, the ringtone abruptly stopped, and that's when I heard heavy breathing coming from the other end. I barely had enough time to respond when I heard a knocking on the glass of the patio doors. I grabbed an unscrewed bedpost from the closet before checking things out. When I looked out through the doors, my heart stopped. Holding my phone was a dark figure in a goat mask. Before I can make out any other details, the masked man slid my patio door open. At the speed of light, I burst through the front doors and headed for my neighbor's house across the street. There, I banged on the door until an older woman came to greet me. She immediately called the police after I explained everything to her. The cops arrived 10 minutes later, and after a thorough search of my house, they found no trace of the intruder. After that ordeal, there was no way I was staying in that house alone, so I asked the officers if I could accompany them to the station, to which they obliged. While I was at the station, one of the officers informed me that they had located my phone outside the house. However, since there were no fingerprints on it, added to the fact that I couldn't give a detailed description of the assailant, it was a dead end. There was one last unpleasant surprise when I unlocked my phone to call my mom. Upon seeing what was in my photo gallery, my blood ran cold. The officer saw that I was uneasy and asked me what was wrong. I handed him the phone. There was about 15 videos of me sleeping on the couch, each nearly 3 minutes long. The masked man that I saw had been inside my house and was watching me while I was sleeping. I felt so violated that I became nauseous and called my mom and told her everything. Hours later, she and my sister came straight from the airport to come get me. We didn't live in that house much longer after that. For the longest time, I couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened if I had woken up with that man standing over me. Perhaps I wouldn't be here to tell you this story. It took a while, but I finally came to terms with what happened. But I would be lying if I told you that this experience doesn't haunt me to this day.
This is one of my friends, Mary's story, but she's not here anymore. So this happened after she met a guy. One day, Mary made a new boyfriend who said his job was an actor. She would show me some pictures, and he definitely had a nice face that everybody would fall in love with him. I was jealous of my friend. However, I still can't believe what happened. Although he said he was an actor, he never appeared in a movie, nor did earn any income. He was actually a would-be actor. According to my friend, he had no acting skills or any qualifications as an actor at all. So he was such a playboy, just a man who was confident of his handsome face. The two seemed to meet well, but their argument and fight always continued. The reason they fought was quite unusual. He always said he wants to be the main role of serial killer movies as a killer, and always forced Mary to act in the opposite role. At first, she did that for him because she loved him. However, he became more and more seriously immersed and began to actually hit or hurt her at some point. He realized his mistake soon after he got out of the immersion, but he didn't feel much guilt about it. That's why she was always hurt, and once he almost stabbed her with a knife. I told her to break up right away, but she was already felt love in him so deeply that she couldn't easily break up with him. She insisted that the rest was fine except for that. It was about 3 months after they met. One day, I got a video call from her. Beyond the screen, she was seen in the hotel room and her boyfriend standing right behind her. While Mary was smiling and talking to me, he was staring at me without any word. He was glaring at my face through the screen. He rummaged through his bag and took out a small hand axe. Then he came up and began to spit out some kind of lines to Mary. She looked confused and asked him, "What are you doing, babe?" For no reason, he became more and more furious, mumbled something, and hacked at her head with an axe. The cell phone fell from her hand to the floor, and soon I couldn't see them through on the screen. I screamed. After I heard some horrible smashing sound for a while, the sound stopped. The footsteps followed, and he finally picked up the phone. His face was all covered with blood, and he was smiling with his gums. Finally, I did it. My first movie. How is my acting? Isn't it fun? Hey, clap your hands. Clap! If you don't clap, I'll cut your friend's neck. He put the axe around her neck, and I had to pretend clap, crying. My mind was coming over faint. He put the cell phone on the shelf, lifted her dead body up, and smiled at me with a V sign, as if he were taking a commemorative photograph. Being terrified, I screamed, hung up the phone, and immediately called the police. As soon as they arrived at the scene, that guy was immediately arrested by the police and ended up being imprisoned. Until the end, he claims that he is an actor, and that he is innocent because what he did is just a part of acting.